Hey, Jeff, how are you doing today?
Outstanding, Darren. How are you doing?
Good, outstanding in your field. And if it's raining, you don't want to do that because
You'll get wet,
you'll get wet.
soggy, and then you'd smell like wet hay, which is almost
Yeah,
as bad as
yeah.
wet dog.
Well, hey, or dog.
Hey now, wet dog.
And your doggies are
Um,
doing well. We got two dogs at home today.
yeah, Fritz is doing fine, and then I'm doggy sitting my daughter's dog, Surly, who is they're both puppies, and they
Oh,
are thick as thieves. So you take your eye off of those two pooches for 1 second. Socks are being munched. Yesterday they somehow grabbed some Tupperware and were
oh.
gnawing on the Tupperware things.
And if they get
I like
excited, are they noisy? Do they generate sound?
Let me tell you something. I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel
Yo.
just to showcase these two because they wrestle like crazy people. I mean,
Oh,
she's like 12 pounds of brick with four tiny
that's
legs. And
surly.
Fritz,
That's
as you know,
yeah.
that's Surly. And then, as you know, Fritz is kind of lanky, lynx-like. So he's really fast, but like when Surly will do this thing where they play keep away, it's really funny. So they're like children. So if one grabs a bone, the other one could be gnawing on whatever. The minute the other one gets the bone, they have to have it. So they fight over the toys. And Surly is like a stealth attacker. Like Fritz will just be sitting there minding his own. She'll creep up on him, like a leopard in the wild. And then when she gets within striking distance, it's full throttle. And she like collides into him. It is the funniest thing to watch.
Well, that sounds like an adorable noise, and then you turn around and you watch. But there's some kind of noises, there's some kind of sound issues. There are problems. And at the Right Next Door podcast, we're here to talk about neighbors. By the way, this is the Right Next Door podcast. If you haven't already, please like and review. Send us email. Keep engaged. We love hearing from you guys, and we always appreciate it. But today we're talking about things that are not delightful noises. Am I right, Jeff?
We are, yeah. We have several stories about various noise offenders. I will say when these two guys get at it, it actually gets to the point where I need to quiet them down because it's even annoying to
the
me.
doggy
Yeah.
noise, yeah.
I try to cool the fun down a little bit because they do get overheated and then they're just barking at each other, but in a fun way. But my rule of thumb is if I'm annoyed, the neighbors are annoyed.
Yeah.
And so I try to, kind of curtail that. But as you may or may not know, there are some neighbors who just don't care what kind of noise they're making.
They
And
don't care.
those are the stories.
They don't live near other people. Other people don't matter, and the sound they generate, it's only their sound. It's like yeah, it's like body odor. You don't always smell yourself.
Oh boy, that you know what? That should be next week's topic. That reminds
Neighbors with
we're
body
not gonna
odor.
get it. just body odor. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you this story. So I'm in at Home Depot the other day. I put some legs on a table, and I had to go in and get some longer bolts because the bolts I had were too short. So I don't know if you've ever purchased bolts at Home Depot, but it's like a long wall.
Oh,
and there's
yeah.
80 million.
Yeah.
So I'm looking and looking, and of course, there's always some jamoke right in front of the bolts that I need to buy.
Yeah.
So he's kneeling down because some of them are like closer to the floor, and I got within about 4 feet of this guy, and I could smell him.
Wow.
And then, of course, I had to get very close to him because I literally was like reaching over, and I was like Judas Priest, man, soap and deodorant. Like what is going on here? Either this guy had no idea he stunk that bad, or just like had some bathing issues.
I think this is the root cause of a lot of issues between people, just not having any awareness that there's another single person in the world, whether it's body odor or noise. And you got to care. You got to be aware of the fact that there are other humans on the planet. And some of them, Jeff, are smelly, and some of them are very, very noisy.
Very noisy, and we will cover several stories today of noisy neighbors.
Dirty deeds, triggered tirades, busybodies, and missing cats. They say tall fences make good neighbors, but bad neighbors make the Right Next Door podcast.
So you live in a house or an apartment or a place, and because you're alive on the face of the earth, there are going to be other humans, maybe that you see, but certainly that you hear, Jeffrey.
You hear them normally at the worst time, at all hours of the evening. And when I was looking for some of these stories, I didn't realize I've never lived in New York. Have you?
No, I've certainly visited many times, but yeah.
Well, so apparently from one of these stories I read, it was stated that in New York, there's some sort of a carpet rule for rentals where 70% of the units are supposed to be carpeted, which I don't know if that's factual or not, but that does kind of make sense because if you don't have a buffer between the person above and below.
And what's it like? What's it like if you're in the Netherlands, Jeff, and your upstairs neighbor is tromping around in those wooden shoes? That's got to be pretty miserable. I mean,
if you're clunking around in clogs, those are noise. That's noisy footwear. I remember going over to my mother-in-law's condo, and she had an elderly lady above her, and whenever her grandkids were over, they must have been wearing tap shoes because they would just run from one end of the condo. So you could just hear them coming. It was like the Doppler effect, where you hear and they were just running back and forth. I'm like, what are they doing up there that these two kids are running around like lunatics? But you could hear everything.
I'm always aware. I actually have downstairs neighbors here, and I am always very, very aware. I'm a really good upstairs neighbor because sometimes I walk around toe heel to really be quiet. I'm always very conscious. If I'm moving furniture or anything, I'm very conscious of my downstairs neighbors. And I have wood floors. I have no carpets. I have some throw rugs, but I'm completely.
Well, you left out. You're normally wearing those ballet shoes in the house, which helps too.
I'm
very gentle.
I'm in touch with my masculinity. I will do some bar exercises, and I keep it very, very quiet. My toe shoes make a little bit of a sound, but yeah. It's I'm very conscious of those things.
You're not doing the stair stepper at 2 o'clock in the morning and that sort of thing.
Or practicing my tap dancing. I used to be quite a tap dancer, Jeff, and but I never did.
Really?
I'm a theater guy. I come from theater.
Oh.
There was a musical called The Boyfriend. I played Tony, the lead in The Boyfriend, in undergrad school, and so I had to tap dance for that.
Wow, I thought you were putting me on. I didn't know you could tap dance.
I could do a little shuffle ball change sometime for the podcast.
Wow.
I'll fit that in somewhere.
That's we can add that to our YouTube channel.
Certainly. I think they're going to be looking for that, looking for the host of the Right Next Door podcast and his tap dancing skills. And then you could do a pool demonstration, or we could do some of your drumming perhaps. I could tap dance, you could drum.
I tap dance too, but it's normally tap dancing out of an issue that I've either caused or I'm trying to get out of.
Yeah, talking to your wife about a problem, and tap dancing around the truth, I bet.
Well, no, I'm fine. I'm finally out of the doghouse by putting those table legs on because I had been on the honey-do list for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And, I don't want to rush into anything.
Now, does the table still smell like the guy from Home Depot?
Luckily, no, because the bolts that I grabbed from that shelf were 4 or 5 levels above that dude. I literally just grabbed a handful and then counted several feet away from them, and then put back what I did want, and then hightailed it out of there.
Oh, that's striking.
But,
that's striking.
Yeah, that's. Well, getting back to this, so we got a couple of stories on the on the noisy neighbors, and there's actually a county in Virginia, that just passed an ordinance that would level a $500 fine to people who are making too much noise in their house. The ordinance prohibits loud noise from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., creating an all-day restriction. While there is no set decibel level, officials encourage residents to use good judgment. Well, instead of calling the police. Well, if that was the case, why is there an ordinance?
If your ordinance is about waiting for people to use their good judgment. In what sphere does that work? Just waiting for other people to have some awareness or consciousness of other humans? I don't know.
The ordinance specifies loud noise as music and or other noise that is clearly heard in another person's home, amplified through TVs, stereos, radios, loudspeakers, or similar devices. It does not apply to kids playing outside.
Good to know.
So
what about, but see, those are all electronic things. Jeff, if I'm practicing my saxophone, I can go nuts.
You ever seen that guy on YouTube that plays that George Michael tune? I think it's Sexy Sax Man or something. It is the funniest. He plays, I can't think of the name of the song now, but just go to YouTube and check out Sexy Sax Man. He walks into like the eating area of malls and just starts playing his saxophone with no shirt on. It's outrageous. But so to your point, yes, I could drum all day long between 7 a.m. For me, this is kind of a problem because if I'm drumming, there's no way to practice the drums and be quiet unless I'm playing like practice pads, which I don't play on because they don't really mimic real drums.
So when you were growing up, when you were learning to play drums, how old were you when you started playing drums?
Oh boy, early grammar school. I don't know, maybe third, fourth grade.
And so, did your folks? Did you have neighbors when you were a kid?
I'll tell you a funny story because
so Jeff's a kid learning to play drums, and
learning to play drums, and so my mom was like kind of a saint with that because I would. This is as I got older and better at it. So maybe freshman year in high school, I actually started to get pretty good at the kit. And my mom would allow me to play. I mean, I would play for hours. I mean, I'd come home from school and I'd play till like dinner time nonstop. And, and I'd have the headphones on and I'd be playing through entire albums and, that kind of thing. But if I did it on the weekend, my dad, after like 10 minutes of that, he'd be like, knock it off. Too noisy.
Wow.
And and this is going way back.
And this wasn't on pads. This is like playing the drums for hours.
Yeah. This was like playing, literally like Van Halen albums start to finish.
In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, baby. That drum solo in In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
I did all of them. I mean, I could literally play AC/DC albums start to finish, Van Halen start to finish. I mean, you name it. I was going through the albums.
And so when the houses on either side of you, when those people moved out, did your family just buy those properties and annex that area? So you probably owned other homes on either side after they moved out because of the noise.
Well, it's funny because my folks and their neighbor had been there for years. Like and the neighbors just moved out a year or two ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And he worked from home. This is like, in the early 80s when people weren't really working from home, but he had a business that he could work from home. And he didn't tell me until later, as they were moving out, because he was like, boy, I remember when you used to play the drums, like, for the entire afternoon. And he goes, I really liked it. I'm like,
oh, wow.
So I was like, well, no wonder you didn't complain. That was very nice of you to like my playing. But, I don't know how you would like it because like I'm hearing the music. So when people that don't hear you're just hearing the drums. I'm hearing the song and I'm drumming to the song.
So you're playing the music through your headphones and playing the drums. And so other people just hear drums. It's like,
they just hear thunk, thunk, crash, bang, crash, thunk, thunk, And so that I could see would be annoying because it probably would be okay if you were listening to, unless you didn't like Van Halen or whatever. But he never complained about it, but could clearly hear. I used to play in the basement and he could hear on his second floor across the gangway in his house. So that's how loud I was playing.
Well, I make my living doing audio recording. I do voiceover, audiobooks, things like that. If I had a neighbor like you, I'd basically have to come over there. I'd have to wrestle you to the ground and say, these are the hours in which you can drum. Outside of these hours, verboten.
Yeah. No, I would get that even as a kid. But, one of the posts I read, some neighbors were complaining about live bands playing yard parties, and you of I we've both played outside at yard parties, but we're cognizant of the time, and when it gets to like 9:30ish, we start winding it down.
Well, I got to believe, Jeff, our music, because of our skill level, it's always going to be a benefit to hear our music as loud as we like. And so
I would concur. People probably should have been paying for an outdoor concert, really, in the neighboring yards. But
we do we do gentler, kinder music for ears. We're not the kind of music that you and I are playing these days is not the Iron Butterfly In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Hello Police Department? There's a jazz band playing Girl from Ipanema Too Loud. We really need that. The bossa nova is just starting to get over the top.
And if they move into mambo, we're going to have to move right out of the neighborhood. We can't handle that.
You guys got to come and shut that soiree down. Too noisy.
If I get another Dean Martin hit, I'm going to go over there and give them a piece of my mind.
But so I mean, look, if you're having a party, you normally kind of alert the neighbors, or you don't go after, I don't know what's a good time, 10 o'clock, I guess. And so, I mean, but people just, some people are just cranky.
Yeah.
And what I was wondering about this place in Virginia, what if it's an elderly person?
Yeah.
Who's got the TV cranked up because they can't hear any better. They can't turn it down, otherwise they won't hear it. So
do you spring for hearing aids? Do you help them out in some way with some kind of accommodation? But that's got to be a problem. And shoot us an email or let us know if you have this situation. That is a serious issue where people that are hard of hearing cranking up their TV, and it's just miserable. You're hearing the same soap operas and game shows every day of your life, and that's got to be pretty miserable.
Yeah, well, it's the commercials that make me nuts. I mean, because the commercials come on louder than the show does.
They're designed to. There's a thing they do called compression, where the audio is made to have an overall loudness level that's higher than the program, and that just can knock you out of your chair. Yeah,
and that what that's based on, because there is a maximum level that can be set at, and all the advertisers crank it to the max level, which is why you'll never hear a commercial that is not louder than the program. So I learned that from my TV days, because I asked one of the guys, I'm like, this is like super annoying. And if you could invent, like, my TV allegedly will equalize the sound, it totally doesn't work. I was bamboozled when I bought that feature, because you're supposed to be able to put on, I forgot what it's called, like steady audio or something, and it's supposed to maintain the same. It doesn't do it at all.
No.
So I wish they would invent a TV where when my show stops, the minute that louder commercial comes on, it just totally mutes, and then my show comes back on. But
that would be very helpful. There are times I wish I had an actual noise meter. I'd like to know. The woman I was dating for a while, she always had the television on very, very quiet, and I'm not really that hard of hearing, but I especially if you have a program that has people with strong accents, and I wanted the volume higher, and that used to drive her nuts, so we'd tussle back and forth about the volume on the television, and I'd like to have had like an audio meter to be able to tell exactly how loud it was and say, look, and like go find some evidence somewhere, this is not audible to normal humans, and to bring that to her. Say,
What does she have, like cat-like hearing?
She had weirdly cat-like hearing, and it would drove me a little crazy.
Yeah, my aunt was that way, because she would not only listen to her television very softly, she would speak very softly.
Oh,
and then I'd be like, what? And me, I'm like as loud as they come. I'm like Mr. Boisterous, so nobody has trouble hearing me.
You and me in a room together,
But she would be like, could you get me some tea? I'm like, what? And she was just very, very soft-spoken. I mean, she was a librarian, and I guess she was just used to speaking softly. But I mean, even as a kid, I remember her speaking very softly. And I couldn't watch TV at her house because I couldn't hear anything. And she didn't want to. She was in an apartment, didn't want to raise it up for the reasons we're speaking of.
Well, my mother used to. I have the kind of voice that really carries. I used to live in a 3-story building with my mom when I was in high school, and I could be on the 3rd floor. No, I could be on the ground floor in the kitchen, and I could be saying something to my brother or what have you, and my mother could hear me like 2 stories up. Just
2 stories up.
You have a certain kind of resonance to your voice. It really carries, and it's handy if you're in showbiz. If you're on stage.
Right.
If you're tap
well,
dancing.
and I think a lot of this, I would think, particularly if you're in a condo or an apartment building or something, but an ordinance where they're policing the sounds in your own home, it seems over the top to me.
Well, it's over the top, and it's having people police their own sound. Like you're supposed to just have some knowledge of exactly what will or will not annoy your neighbors. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Although now I say that. And then I will tell you another story where I've got surround sound in the den.
Yeah.
And if I'm home alone, I'll put on, I've got a bunch of live concerts. I got Stones live. I have Pink Floyd live.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Laura coming home one night. And she's like, I can hear that all the way in the driveway.
Oh.
Like the windows, like I would kick up the bass, and then I would be at the concert, literally. I mean, it was that loud in the house. Yeah. She's like, we can probably hear this a block away. You might want to turn it down. I'm like, okay.
That makes me think I should play some of those concert videos. Maybe you'll get a list from you of what ones are good, because I have a really great home theater setup with 5.1 sound, with the subwoofer and the 4 speakers. So I'd like to maybe watch some concerts like that. That sounds good. I'm going to bring in stories from my neighbors after I'm playing these concerts very, very loudly. I'm going to get concert footage from Jeff, and by God, I want to generate enough noise to create content for the Right Next Door podcast about how people react when they hear a concert right next door.
Yeah, you crank up the live version of Satisfaction or something on that Stones concert, and you'll have people across
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Your neighbors across the street will be complaining about that.
Okay.
So we have another story, and this one I will say annoys even me. This one is Dateline, Laguna Beach, California.
Oh.
They have a new noise pollution rule for loud vehicles.
Oh.
And they're specifically targeting, and we all know who we're talking about, those guys that drive these little pipsqueak cars, and then they put on these mufflers that sound like a million mosquitoes firing all at one time. And I'm like, that isn't even a cool car. Like, the sound doesn't make it any cooler. The car looks stupid and the sound is stupid.
Maybe that's
Go get
all
yourself a real car.
That's all they can do. They can't really get the kind of killer automobile they like, so they want to take out their revenge for their difficult life on the neighborhood. Okay, if I can't have the car I want, I'm going to make everybody in the world suffer. If I'm suffering because I can't get the car I want, by God, I'll let everybody know how ticked off I am. Ring, 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 ring.
Yeah, but I don't think, I think these people think they're driving cool cars.
Oh.
When you're putting a spoiler on a Toyota Corolla and then putting on like 18-inch rims and a muffler that's like, I mean, it's
I always wonder about it. When people have a Toyota Corolla or a tiny little car with a big spoiler on the back, I mean, these people are not the sharpest tools in the shed. They're just
no.
Not. What's the wind resistance to hold down the back end of your car when you're going 37 miles an hour? I mean,
and even when they're idling, they're obnoxious, because you hear this. So this one, I don't know how. Let me see how they say they're going to police. I mean, it's probably has something to do with California, so it's probably a cruising related law.
While you're looking up that, I was thinking about there was a car that was very loud on my block a few days ago, and I thought, you know what? I bet that guy had his catalytic converter stolen. It sounded like there was no muffler on the car. We were talking about an earlier Right Next Door podcast about people getting their catalytic converters stolen from their car. And basically, if that's stolen, you have a wide open hole from your engine to the outside world, and that's like you have zero muffler on your car. I thought, I wonder if that person's had their catalytic converter stolen, or they just want to be obnoxious. You know, there had to be something wrong.
I mean, I will tell you that the kid 2 doors down, the alley from us, he's got one of these. I think it's a Miata.
Really? And little car.
Yeah. A little, like the Miata is like the size of a golf cart. And he's got one of those stupid mufflers on it. And, you know, I mean, he's a kid. He's probably high school or early college. And, you know, he's coming and going at like 2, 3 in the morning.
Oh, boy.
And literally when he takes off, I can hear the car like 3 blocks down. I can still hear the damn car. Now, in the daytime, it's annoying enough. At 2 or 3 in the morning, it's super annoying. And I actually think one of their direct next door neighbors talked to the parents, because he's been much quieter now, you know, after 11 o'clock at night, because it got to the point where it was just like his friends would come over, and it must have been a gang of tiny car people, because at one point we had like 3 of these cars lined up making all this racket at 2 a.m. I'm like, you know, enough is enough.
When they get together, when they gang up, the little noisy car people gang up and form a club, that's a real issue.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe that's what the kids are into these days. I you know, to me, it's like, you know, like a band of Shriners getting together in those little cars and just, you know, terrorizing motorists all over the street. You and
I had a gang of like bike riders, Jeff, and we were happy to ride our bikes quietly and silently around the neighborhood. Okay, maybe we were a little noisier than that.
We were, well, at least at 4th of July, did you ever do the thing where you took a clothespin and then put playing cards on the spokes, and then you'd make some racket with that, which was, and my dad told me when they were, you know, children of the 50s, they used to make their car sound like it had a bigger engine. He said they used to wrap thick rubber over the exhaust. And then as you hit the accelerator, it would make like this rumble sound that made it sound like you had a much bigger engine in the car than you had. So I guess this is an age-old problem that we're still dealing with.
Men, you know, boys, men, young men. We just crave that noise. We crave that noise.
I guess it's been a problem since we went from horse and buggy to cars.
I think in Roman times, when the kids driving their chariots. The teenage kids with their chariots, they'd put some stone playing cards in the spokes, and I bet it made a terrible racket.
It's terrible noise of those rock wheels going down the cobblestones.
That's right.
That was, what a nightmare. Well, speaking of crime, there was another story out of Florida, east coast of Florida.
Of course, Florida.
Woman is hearing strange sounds in her yard at night, and is convinced that there were burglars attempting to case and break into her home. So she calls the police.
Wait. So there are burglars like looking at her. When you say casing the house, okay, we're going to check out this house because we're going to rob it. And the burglars are making noise doing that? I mean, you want
according to her.
Well, you're a bad burglar if you're making noise while you're just casing the joint.
Well, you can be a burglar. You're just not a cat burglar. Yeah. That would be very quiet. The cat burglars are quiet. Regular burglars, very, very noisy. You know, they don't care how much racket they make.
And hamburglers.
And the hamburglar, yes, he will gladly repay you on Tuesday. I think. Yeah. Is that from Popeye?
Yeah.
So anyway, the police come. She phones the police. Police come. Guess what was making all the racket?
Cats.
That's not a bad guess. A giant iguana.
Oh.
So she's got like some giant iguana living in the foliage of her yard that apparently is coming out at night. And I don't know, what do iguanas eat? I don't even know.
They eat bugs, and a giant iguana would eat giant bugs. So you'd kind of want that iguana around to take care of the giant. But
happy ending.
Do iguanas make noise? I didn't know that your lizards made that much. Like that's a neighbor problem.
Well, it must have been making rustling sounds or something for her to think that there were like, you know, burglars, plural, walking around her yard at night. Because I guess she only heard it at night. So iguanas must be nocturnal feeders.
Well, and there are other animals that are much like birds. If people have like cockatoos or parrots that make noise or screech, those are annoying neighbor birds. If you have an apartment next door to. I used to have zebra finches when I was in graduate school. I had two zebra finches named Biff and Happy. For you people who are Death of a Salesman fans of the play Death of a Salesman, Biff and Happy were the two sons of the salesman. Anyway, so it's like a theater thing, and my zebra finches would make a lot of noise. I can't have birds here and like try to record audio in my place. So I currently have no birds.
I don't even know what a zebra finch looked. What was the genesis of you obtaining two zebra finches?
Well, I just wanted a little companion animal. They're little birds. They're cute little birds, about 2 inches long with orange conical beaks. And they're just little birdies. What the heck? I'm not sure why I got birds.
What about a fish?
Fish are very quiet.
Fish are quiet, and they're mesmerizing to watch. They lull you into sleep.
Yeah, but I guess any animal, if you got a big enough fish, a big enough lizard, a big enough bird, it's going to make more noise. Big dog.
Big dog, big noise. Yeah, that is kind of funny. The only person I've ever known other than you that's had a bird was my sister, who in grammar school somehow talked my parents into. I'm sure my dad was like, "Get this thing out of the house." But I don't even remember what kind of bird it was. I just know that I came home from school one day and there's like this, I don't know, 5 foot tall, 4 foot tall cage.
Wow.
And there's, the newspapers in the bottom. And but the problem is that bird would like flap its wings and then all the junk in the cage would just like go all over the living room.
Oh.
So I think, I don't know if my mom, if it had an accident or it accidentally flew away. I just remember the bird was there one day and then bird not there one day. So I don't know exactly. I was too young to know exactly what was going on other than messy, noisy bird. No longer here.
Jeff, the bird was taken to a farm. It's going to live among other birds and farm animals, and I'm sure it'll be happier there on the farm. That's where the bird went, and birds can be crazy noisy, and they live a very long time. So you have a noisy parrot, and you're going to be dealing with that noisy parrot for, 50 years.
They live 50 years?
Oh, yeah. Parrots, you have to put a codicil in your will to leave your parrot with a relative because they live so long. Parrots can live 30, 40, 50 years, yeah.
Wow.
Like an African gray parrot, yeah.
We were at a restaurant out in Chandler, Arizona that had like this gigantic cage. I forgot the name of the restaurant, but it was loaded with all different kinds of parrots and birds and stuff. And one of them was like on the perch. You walk in, and it would say French fry.
Huh.
So you just be standing in line and be like French fry, French fry. And so I don't know if it just knew to say that or it was actually asking for.
I'm sure it was asking for it because after you give that bird a French fry, it's going to ask for more French fries.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. I mean, it was cool to watch them. I mean, I enjoy looking at them, but I would enjoy looking at them at somebody else's home or in a setting like that.
Were you in the restaurant? Were you able to see the birds defecating from your table in the restaurant?
We had better than that. We had two of them fornicating during our dinner. We're like, oh my God, look at that.
You don't need a biology lesson. You don't need. Hey, you take the family out for a nice meal, and they're getting a
frisky
lesson.
Finches during my soup. But it was an outdoor restaurant, so the birds were outside. It wasn't like an indoor.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it was an outdoor restaurant, but all the tables outside were around this giant bird
I think
cage.
if you're going to have animals having sex near your table, you always want them to be outside, Jeff. I think whenever there's restaurant sex going on, I think it's best if it's outside.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can't really, when the urge calls, you can't stop wildlife.
No, you can't. That's why it's called wildlife, Jeff.
That's right.
That's right.
They lead a wild life, to quote the Talking Heads.
Well, I'm sure the cause or the issue of noisy neighbors, I think this will come up again in our podcast, Jeff. I think we all deal with noise in various ways, and I think it's something we can just have a little bit of civility, just have an awareness of the people around us, awareness of the world around us, make the world a better place, and hold down the noise, people.
Hold down the noise. And now the September, guess what happens in September?
What's that?
Leaf blowers.
Oh, no.
I'm going to be breaking out my Swedish-made leaf blower and making some
Jeff.
hellbound Hellraiser.
No, Jeff, no, don't. Can't you use like a hand-cranked mechanical leaf blower? Do you really have to use the loud? Oh.
Not going to do it.
No.
I'm going to crank that. No, I think I mentioned that while we did that podcast. I don't throttle up ever because I want to try and maintain my hearing. So even with the headphones on, it's still noisy, fully throttled. So I go maybe a third of the way, but that thing will blow some leaves, I'll tell you.
They will, and they also, some of them are very polluting. Also, these 2-cycle engines that you mix the oil in, and that's leaf blowers are a scourge. A scourge.
I don't know. That's something I've never understood why they don't do a 4-cycle. Because when I used to mow my own lawn, I had a Honda mower, and you only get that pollution when you're mixing the oil with the gas. If they were 4-cycle where the oil and the gas is separated, like on an automobile, you wouldn't have any of that pollution.
Well, Jeff,
problem.
we need, with that noise pollution is what I'm talking about. They all need to be quiet little leaf blowers, or better yet, as I'm indicating, kind of a hand cranked kind of a thing where you just have one hand holds the leaf blower and the other hand kind of gets it whirling up like a salad spinner, but it pushes out air. I'm sure that's doable. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, create that leaf blower, help people avoid that leaf blower noise. You heard it here on the Right Next Door podcast, the hand cranked wind generating leaf blower. Make it happen.
That's quite a work. That's a workout, and a visual to picture a giant salad swirly machine.
Yes,
moving your leaves.
It's
either that or we got to get rid of all the trees. I don't know, one or the other.
Yeah, it's an option. We got options.
We got options.
You have a neighbor who's driving you crazy. Tell us about it. rightnextdoorpodcast@gmail.com. The Right Next Door podcast is an unscripted production of Eversharp Media, which takes a satirical look at local news coverage and social media. The material, views, and opinions expressed are not necessarily those of the talent, guests, or the production company. Celebrity voices impersonated, including this one.